Gene Nelson, to cook or not to cook? Gene Nelson, to cook or not to cook? Thank you.
Hello, Toastmasters. Mr. Contest Toastmaster, most welcome guests. There are some people who should not be allowed in the kitchen, and I'm one of them. Now, I learned how to cook from my mother, or more accurately, I did not learn how to cook from my mother. My mother had a philosophy on cooking. She said, if it's not frozen, or it doesn't come in a can, it's not food. I was the only kid I knew who thought cafeteria food at school was delicious. Delicious. I didn't encounter any problems with my mother's cooking or this philosophy until the time that I was coming home with my brand new husband from our honeymoon. And it hit me. This man was going to expect me to cook. His mother was a good cook. She had taken cooking lessons. Oh my. Fortunately, somebody had given us a cookbook for a wedding present. A fabulous 3-ring cookbook with a red and white check cover. You know which one it is. Great pictures. So I knew what a sauté looked like. And so I got into that cookbook. 3,212 recipes. And I found out that if you're not careful, you can screw them all up. Baking was probably the worst. And unfortunately, at this time, I was working in a school and I had a club of youngsters, and this club of youngsters thought that the way to raise money was to have bake sales. And these children thought that their sponsor should bake something for them. I was in denial on this concept. I went out and got the makings for a chocolate cake. But I didn't start working on this chocolate cake until 10 o'clock the night before the bake sale. I truly didn't want to do it. And I mixed all those ingredients together and I looked at the clock and I thought, okay, I bake this thing, I put it in the oven, I cool it when it comes out, I put frosting on it. It's going to be 3 o'clock in the morning before this cake is done. I have to be at work tomorrow. Oh my God. Can you microwave a chocolate cake? We were about to find out. I threw that puppy in the oven and nuked it for what seemed like a good length of time. And I took it out and I found out 2 things about microwaved cake from a recipe that isn't intended for microwaving. First of all, it has the texture of crackers. Second of all, it has a top that looks like that. It looked like a fallen volcano. Nothing a little frosting can't fix. I frosted that sucker until it really looked gorgeous. 3 inches of frosting on top. And I took it to the bake sale the next day. One of my students, Randy Ackles, who should have known better, bought my cake. He took it home. We never spoke of it again. Well, bake sales don't end with one bake sale, but I had learned that you follow the directions. So I was an improved cook, and the next time I decided I'm going to do brownies. You can't go wrong with brownies, right? Mm-hmm. Right. I dragged out my mixer to make these brownies just exactly the way they were supposed to be made. But you need to know that when you are not a good cook, you don't care about your equipment. I had bought my mixer at Goodwill. The price was right. It was a genuine antique, and the beaters were held in with little screws. This mixer was cranking away, and one of those screws flew off. I looked all over the kitchen, and I could not find Well, it was mixed good enough. I threw it in the oven, the brownies came out, they looked good, I took them to the bake sale. Randy Ackles bought the brownies. And he took a bite of one of the brownies right there. And he found the screw. I was so glad to get it because you cannot replace the screws. And his teeth were okay. But I had learned my cooking is potentially dangerous. People can get hurt. Okay, I moved on in my cooking and I had discovered that when you make a pot of beans, beans will make several meals, really good meals. And they aren't tricky. Beans, water. What can go wrong? No mixer, no baking. This was good stuff. But what the recipe didn't tell you, never tells you, is that beans have a life expectancy. They don't last forever, and they sneak into the bad zone without letting you know. My beans sneaked into the bad zone, and I fixed my husband and me a great big old bowl of beans, and I'll tell you what, we woofed those beans down, and he spent all night throwing up. I had grown up on my mother's cooking. I did not throw up. But those beans went through me very rapidly. I learned that my cooking could potentially kill somebody. Now, recently, my husband decided that he was going to take over the cooking. After 30 years, it took that man that long to figure out that his life was in jeopardy if he did not do this, and that some people, namely his wife, should not be allowed in the kitchen. Mr. Toastmaster.
Mr. Timer, 1 minute, please.